Excellent. So that is the end of the podcast section. So now we can just do more of a natural chat. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we're getting some, you all can't see this, so I'm going to go back and get us all caught up on what we've got going on here in the chat. So we have Composer was talking about how to serve man, because we're talking about how to serve aliens.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, that only logically makes sense. I mean,
It does.
if you
We're
want to know
talking
how.
about cannibalism and long pig. All right.
Maybe that's something we should do. Maybe that's something I should do in book 2, is maybe as or book 3, when the humans finally take the war back to Archinomus, maybe as a bit of revenge. Maybe a few humans should be eaten on the planet. I mean, they're generally a peaceful species, but maybe a little eye for an eye may not be too bad.
There's always just one vengeful person out there.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody with a really twisted, sense of taste.
Actually, I know who would do it.
Oh, there you go.
In my story, I know exactly who would do this. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we also just have some comments here from Guacamole Bill was talking about, that's a great short story, How to Serve Man. And then Karen was talking about how her mom knew that she loved musicals and let her listen to Les Mis when she was really young. She was not thrilled when her first question was, Mom, what's a prostitute?
Why am I not surprised?
Oh, my God.
I grew up listening to Les Mis, and I don't think I ever questioned it. It was just like, this is just a fun musical, and I enjoy listening to it, and never really went deeper than that until I was old enough to actually be like, oh, that's what Lovely Ladies is about. I gotcha now.
When I was a kid, I used to listen to, I've always, listening to music, I've always loved music, but I've always been more pulled to the words and the lyrics of the songs. Much to my parents' chagrin, when I was a young kid, and my parents used to listen to 60s and 50s music all the time in the cars we drove. And there was a very uncomfortable moment for my mom when, I can't remember what the title of the song is, but there is a line that is run away like a douche in the night. And I ended up listening to that.
That's not the actual lyric.
Well, okay, well, that's what the lyric was to me as a kid. So I ended up going to my mom. I'm like, Mom, what's a douche?
It's because this came up recently. It's oh my God, and that song actually was written by Bruce Springsteen, by the way, originally, and then given to the artist who actually I think he written by Bruce Springsteen, but then given to the artist who sang it. Because everybody, that's until like maybe last year, I didn't realize it didn't say that.
Is it a deuce?
I think so.
It sounds like douche. It's like there's a bathroom on the right.
Yeah. God. I'm gonna look this up now. So you go ahead. Sorry. No, it's gonna bother me until I figure out.
Well, and the fact that I can't remember the song is bothering me now too.
I'm not even familiar with this song, I don't think. So...
No, it's the one that's blinded by the light.
Yeah, blinded by the light.
Like a douche. Okay.
I also grew up on musicals and then Metallica.
Yeah.
And I listened to all of my brother's music. So Metallica, Linkin Park. I think Metallica is the oldest band that I ever listened to religiously until I got older. And then it was oh wait, there's actually other music that happened before the 80s.
But Metallica was so awesome. And that was the thing, my wife, when we first met, was shocked that I could fall asleep listening to heavy metal. Like thrash metal kind of stuff. And because when I was younger, my best friend and I we'd have sleepovers, and then oftentimes we'd sleep on the floor of his older brother's, he was 5 years older, of his bedroom. And so he was 5 years older, so he was into all this stuff. So we'd fall asleep listening to Anthrax and Slayer and Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpses? Anyways, and Wolverine Blues and all these other things, and just wildly heavy metal music. So I just I listen to it and it helps me fall asleep.
Yeah, of course.
Lullabies.
I found the lyric, right? And
okay.
I think it's by Manfield Man's Earth Band. It's called the song called "Blinded by the Light." Looks like if you haven't, you said you haven't listened to it, you gotta look it up, because it does sound like it says revved up like a douche, but it's revved up like a deuce, another runner in the night, right? So, but everybody I've ever met has even my mom, she sings it that way. I'm like, Mom, I don't think they're talking about that. That would just be kind of strange, but
Yeah, little
whatever
odd.
works. Yeah. So yeah, that's a
Yeah. Well, that's it. Then we also have Guacamole Bill talking about the Wheel of Time series, saying that they didn't get into it until the first 8 books were out. I got into it, I think, when there was 4 or 5 books out, and it was that was the most stressful series I've ever had to read. I absolutely love it. I am super stoked. There's supposed to be a solid trailer by the end of the summer for the series that's coming out, and Robert
I
Jordan's
need to
widow
get
is
into it.
involved. So there's actually, and she's very dogged in making sure that they stick to what's happening. So it should be really good. But yeah, because everyone's big greatest fear when you're reading a series is that the author is going to die, and that's exactly what happened. 1 or 2 books left in the series, Robert Jordan passed away, and everyone just crumbled. But he knew he was sick. He worked extensively with his wife. He kept extensive notes, audio recordings, just a ton of different stuff. And he started working with Brandon Sanderson before he passed. So it was the only way I can equate it is Greg Capello taking over for Todd McFarlane in the illustration of the Spawn comics. The cape was a little bit shorter, but you didn't really notice a difference.
yeah.
So it was
Yeah, no.
fantastic.
I have heard from pretty much everyone that Brandon Sanderson has taken over and done an excellent job finishing it off. So I need to pick it up at some point soon, since I am really excited to see more fantasy shows and movies and everything, because it's so difficult to find good fantasy movies. Like, you can find lots of good fantasy books, but fantasy movies and fantasy shows, usually they're terrible. There's like Lord of the Rings, and then there's just, they all go the Hobbit route, and I'm just like, it hurts.
This one is very different. It was very good, and I find that anytime you can have what effectively is a 17,000 page book that keeps you entertained throughout. I mean, there are some dull moments. There are some hard hitting moments between book 5, 6, and 7, I think, where there were some issues with the publisher that got dragged out, but there was absolutely fantastic. And what I'm really excited to see, and this is going to anger a lot of people, I imagine, but this isn't being on the podcast, so that's fine, is that if you read The Wheel of Time, and I haven't read, I'm going to admit, I've not read this entire, I haven't read any of the series, but watching the television show Game of Thrones borrowed heavily from The Wheel of Time. Ooh. And I'm using the word borrowed very loosely here. There was, like, it was almost in some points like a retelling of The Wheel of Time in some ways. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out and how the staunch Game of Thrones fans are going to react to Wheel of Time. I'm just looking forward to the moment where I was like, they stole that. No.
Nope.
Turn the coin.
I'm excited for that. I can see chat now. And composer, yes, Gallivant was amazing. I will, especially season 1. And The Witcher is also quite good so far. But that's part of the whole, we're getting good fantasy now. There was quite a long time, my entire childhood, where the only good fantasy, if you were going to watch something, was the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I do have to apologize to my parents, because that was what was on repeat at my house. If I was allowed to do anything with it, it was the like, nope, I have the next 16 hours of television monopolized. Sorry, everyone. My poor dad, when we'd be trying to do like New Year's Eve, it was like, no, Lord of the Rings into the new year. You can't watch something else. This is just sacrilege. So now that I moved out, they get to do their own actual, New Year's stuff.
So back to the Wheel of Time, though. Like, I mean, do you think so? Yeah, Travis, you've read all the books, or
yep.
Okay. So, which one should Larissa start with? Do you think it would be the prequel, New Spring, or Eye of the World? And because I read the Eye of the World and then some of the other ones, and then I realized that there was a prequel, and I went back and actually had like a CD version of it. That's how old I am.
So
but I listened to that, and I thought that was great. Yeah. So
for me, I would say I'm going to agree with Bill on this, and I would say that Most definitely The Eye of the World. And the reason for that being is the same reason why there was
Okay.
a lull. So the Wheel of Time series was originally supposed to be a 9-book series. And once it picked up and started doing really well, then it, like around book 2 or 3, the publishing house came back and they were like, this is amazing. They wanted extended out to be 10 or 11 books. And then they wanted extended to be 15 books. Then they wanted it to be extended to be 20 books. And so this was extended out for great for him, right? His contract is getting bigger
Right.
and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
However, he ended up really butchering, I think it's book 5, 6, and 7, where it just got into 20 pages of describing battle plans. There's a war happening, and it was just 20 pages of just dry battle plans and just really extending things out. And luckily, he realized he was destroying his own series. So he kind of sat back and said, wait a minute. You want 20 books? Fine. I'm going to give you a dictionary. I'm going to give you a prequel. I'm going to give you a book of maps. And I'm going to give you another side adventure book that came out from it. So he came out with 4 other books that were an answer to the demands of the publisher. So
An
I would
excellent
say...
workaround.
Yeah, exactly,
Smart.
right? It's brilliant. So I would say read from start to finish, from the Eye of the World on, and go back because the prequel is an addendum.
Yeah.
It's not something that was written on purpose. So
Cool. Yeah. All right. Publishing order then, instead of the timeline order.
yeah, exactly. I think that's the way to do it. And one thing, because we are getting caught up back to the chat here, just another thing that we missed in chat is a lot of people saying fantastic job. They really enjoyed the stream, and I thought it was great. And thank you very much for everyone for being here and for your support. We absolutely love this.
Yep.
And then there was also a Guacamole Bill was talking about the adaptation of the Sword, or it was talking about the Sword of Truth series was another heavy series that was very good.
Yeah, that was didn't they do
Sword of Truth series, yeah.
That was oh my god, Caitlin Amdal and The Legend of Seeker, right? They did a TV show off of that. Or if that's I think the same thing, right?
Well, they said there was an adaptation of the Sword of Truth series, which was for teens
Yeah.
or something, and they said it was absolutely awful. So
No, this was a TV series. It was called Legend of the Seeker, and I think it was based off of the first 2 books. The show is so oh God, Bill, I don't know, man. I got it. I will be honest with you. I watched that series. I love the series. Don't crucify me. But yeah, it was decent at the start. I agree, and then I think it only went for 2 seasons, and then. But they got me into the Sword of the Truth books, so it's the
Those
same
are
thing. Yeah.
Terry
go ahead.
Goodkind,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, they are.
I personally struggle picking up. I want to read some of Terry Goodkind's things, but I struggle with it because the things you should never do is know a lot about an author or any author controversy before you pick up their book. And I'm really struggling to pick up any Terry Goodkind books because of the way that he treated one of the artists for
Yeah.
cover. And that was just such a I just have such a bitter taste in my mouth about him as an author that I'm just every time I see his books come up, I'm like, I should read those. I'm too bitter still. One day I will get to these.
yeah.
But it's treat your artists better, treat them well, especially if it's through a publisher, because they're doing their best with what the publisher has told them to do. Go
Yeah.
with it.
That's very true.
I think
But-
I started reading it before that kind of broke. So.
Oh, yeah,
But
'cause
yeah,
he-
it's.
That was one of his most recent books that happened with. So, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, they're good ones for getting out of the library or borrowing from Carolyn's mom.
Yeah.
So there
That
we go.
works. That's a
solved.
good idea. And that's the thing. That's one thing I find too. I do get a lot of books from the library, but with the kids' books, we always, Maya is 4 months old on Tuesday, and we've already read her, I think, over 50 books. And there's books that come out from the library that I'm like, I really don't like that one, or this one was kind of good. And then there's ones that I've returned to the library, and before they're returned to the library, they've been purchased for us to keep because they were just that impactful and they were just that well written. And it's amazing. But you can have a really poorly written children's book. Like a book designed for an infant can be a really bad book. I'm not going to name titles, but
board books themselves are just oh my god, and they have to be within 100 words. There's no real way to tell. So, and just stop me because I can go on for this forever. But like you know, it's. I was talking with the Writers Cafe that I'm in, and we kind of came to the understanding that, you know, because I was talking about kids books, is that when you're writing a screenplay, it is more tell, don't show, right? And when you're writing a book, it's show, don't tell, right? And with picture books, board books, picture books, and maybe even possibly like easy readers, which is like right before chapter books, because it's like a little subgenre of easy readers, of chapter books. They are all show, like tell, don't show, right? Because 90% of the story is going to be in the artwork, right? So because you're limited to such a small amount of words in a picture book, the maximum any publisher will take is 1,000 words, and they'll probably cut 500 off of that, right? So and that's it's hard, right? I mean, there's some really good examples of science fiction picture books that I love, but they're rare. Like I actually have right here. This one I love, Earth, Space, Moon Base, right? It's simple, and I swear the artist, I tagged the artist on the author and the artist, Ben Joel Price, on Twitter, and I swear he put Cthulhu in here.
Nice.
And I mean, I'm looking through it, and he just says, I'm not saying I have or have not, right? So
not confirming nor denying.
Yeah, I'm not confirming or denying, right? I mean, look at that thing. Does that not look like Cthulhu to you? I mean, seriously. But yeah, you have. I mean, I get your criticism of board books and maybe picture books like this, but you know, it's you gotta. Most of them are not like masterpiece works of art, you know, and that's the problem, right? I mean,
so, on that note, though, having worked in a bookstore and being forced to work in the kids section often. Phoebe Gilman and Robert Munsch.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two that, like, absolutely, you guys, if you don't have at least one of their books for your kiddos,
I think
I will send you their books because, oh my God, Phoebe Gilman stuff is the most beautifully illustrated books. Just absolutely gorgeous. And then Robert Munsch is, of course, Canadian and has some very good, very silly books, but also the gosh, now the name escapes me, but it's the How Much I Love You book, which I cannot remember the name. Like, if you have not read it, you need to find it. I'll find the title and I'll give it to you guys. Yeah. But it will break your heart, and it will also like be a wonderful one to read to your kids. I Love You Forever. That's what it is. Guacamole Bill got it for me. Yeah, that is the one that you need to do.
Yeah, there's also why am I blanking on this name? It's not Robert Carlyle. Bill Carroll. Bill Carroll is another one. So Bill Carroll is The Hungry Caterpillar and Brown Bear. All those books are fantastic as well. But there are books, like there's some board books that I read that I'm just like, wow, this is so just moving and gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And the artwork is like obviously a really big part of it. But
Goodnight
there's
Moon.
Yeah, Goodnight Moon. But there was again, the Goodnight Moon is one that we have, and my wife looked at this and she was like, why is this so popular? She's like, this is a terrible book. She really doesn't like the book.
It is awful, but like
it's so like people love it.
It's simple.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, is like there's another one that I loved, which was, I can't remember the name of it, but we bought it for Maya, and it's this little girl who gets up and she goes to visit her grandmother with her mom, and all along the way they're saying hi to different cultures, people of different cultures. So there's konnichiwa, there's bonjour, and they go like they go to the French cafe, and they go to the Lebanese bakery, and they go to all these different places, and they meet all these fantastic, wonderful, like, is very open and very inviting and very inclusive, until they get to the park, and she meets up with this little African American boy, and he's like, yo, what's up, dog? And all the other things are like hello, whatever, and then it's just this only this one point of slang. And there's something else that was said as well. I'm like, that's really like just
Stereotyping
yeah,
badly.
very stereotyped. It was very kind of poorly done. And then there's another one that I really didn't like, and it's a series of books. It seems like every book from this publisher is kind of the same way. And there was one that was on musical instruments, and there was one that was on like the uh, solar system and stuff like that. And it's great to have books that have solar systems and things like that set up in it. And this is a book for like a 1 year old or less. And then there is this thing where it's just so intense. They're like, the solar system is made up of multiple planets, and the planets are set out in this order, and it goes through, and it's like each planet orbits the plane. Like, I know some adults that wouldn't be able to comprehend what's being written in this book. How are you doing this for a 1 year old? Like, there's, like you said, Ted, this is a picture book that's got 1,000 words in it.
Yeah, or less. I mean, board books like I think their max is 100, right? So I mean, well, here's one board book I would recommend, right, for you, and we got this for Owen, and it's Baby Loves Aerospace Engineering, and
Nice.
and then there's another one, Baby Loves Quarks, because then it talks about the building blocks of life, right? But it goes through in a very very cool way, you know, explaining how aerospace engineering works, and it uses like this well, the aerospace engine uses this bird, and then this bird is flying, and they talk about the aerodynamics, you know, in a very fun way. And then they shoot this bird in a space helmet off into space, and the little guy is like, "Bye, bird," you know, at the end. It's kind of
That's
but it's
fantastic.
it
That's
gives
awesome.
like the basis of like, and I will say, I don't know if this is kind of spawned my son's interest in like machines and whatnot, but it probably did help, right? I mean, he wants to take everything apart even at 6, and I'm like, I don't know how to put this back together. I'm not an engineer. So don't take the refrigerator apart. No, that's a screw. Okay.
It's great for that stuff. The one thing I really wish, though, and I mean, I do this in my books as well, so I can't complain that much, but if they could create kids' books that don't make the parents cry when they read it to the child, that would be fantastic. Because there's so many that I'm like, this is so sweet and this is so amazing. Like, my wife had never seen Tarzan by Disney.
Oh
And
no.
that's a movie, like, I'm very soft hearted. I'll cry at movies, I'll cry at sad songs and stuff like that, or sad stories. And Tarzan just rips him to pieces. There's so many poignant and sad scenes in that show or that movie. And my wife watched it. And at the end, I'm like, do you want to watch it again? And she's like, wiping her tears. And she's like, no, I hate that. She's like, it's a stupid movie. Like, I don't want to watch that. So the other day, I
That's
just
how
put
I
on.
feel
What was that?
every time that a movie makes me cry. Because Composer and I watched About Time when we were on our last vacation, and
What's
yeah,
that one?
I'm sitting there and I'm crying, and I'm just like, I hate this movie. It sucks. It's awful. I'm having emotions and I don't like it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is amazing and awful, and I hate you.
But that's the thing. Like, people are like, oh, have you seen the movie Up? Nope. No, I have not. I do not intend it. A Dog's Life,
Okay,
not
Up
going
is
to
a bit
happen.
overrated.
Yeah.
You
That's
can
what,
skip
that's
the
what I,
first like 5 minutes. You're good.
yes, that's what I've heard. But the thing is, I played, because I sing to my daughter all the time, and I played the Tarzan soundtrack the other day. And I got partway into it. I'm like, oh wow, this hits differently when you're a parent. I'm like, this is like
Uh,
the pain that I felt watching the movie, it hits so much harder. Like, even just listening to the soundtrack, I started crying. I'm like, oh my god, I love you so much. But yeah, it's pretty
The two
wild.
movies that always get me are the P.S. I Love You and The Time Traveler's Wife. I mean, so I don't know if you guys have. The Time Traveler's Wife is a book, and they adapt, and it's also the same young lady, Rachel McAdams, was starred in About Time. So, but it's a. I don't want to ruin the Time Traveler's Wife for you, but I mean, the husband travels through time, and I don't want to ruin it if you guys are gonna watch it. But like P.S. It's good. It's great. It's great. Very subtle sci-fi in it, and it's very heart wrenching, because what happens to him and how he goes through his life and the moments they meet each other during life. It's it's really, it always gets me. That and P.S. I Love You. Like I would be I would be Hilary Swank if my wife passed. Like I would be the mess that's sitting in their bedroom and just surrounded by pizza boxes until my son was like, "Okay, Dad, come on, you gotta get out of the world."
For me, that
Yeah.
movie is What Dreams May Come with Robin
Oh,
Williams.
that's another one.
That movie absolutely, like, I
cannot
watch it all the
watch that
time,
now.
and it guts me every time I watch it. And it's to the point I've seen it so many times now that I now suffer from preemptive crying. I'll be like five scenes away from a really sad scene, like the scene in the boat with his daughter, and I'll start
Yeah.
like getting that like hiccuping and the sobbing as,
I
as it
have
comes.
not watched that movie since Robin Williams passed because I'm just like I cannot do it. It makes my like skin tingle just thinking about watching it. Given what happened to him, like
Yeah.
I cannot do it.
I
Because
mean,
I
it's
love that movie.
yeah, and cinematically, it's so beautiful. Like everything
I
they
love
do in
that
it.
concept about heaven and hell and it all being what you make it is just such an excellent concept.
Yeah.
And it is also a case, one of the few cases where I would argue that the cinematic adaptation of the book is better as a
Really?
story than the book. Yeah,
Wow.
the movie is better. It's an interesting book, but it is definitely not as emotional. It goes more into kind of like a ghost story and
Okay.
more on the old-timey sort of horror thriller kind of deal that I was interested but less interested in. It definitely didn't hit anything on the emotional piece. So,
Well, and that is definitely, if you want to talk about the monomyth, leaving your ordinary world to go into another world to face massive challenges and then to come back changed. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty massive. But
yes.
Oh yeah.
yeah, and that's something that like we're getting a lot of sad movies here.
Yes. Just gonna talk about really. See, this is what I do though when I'm writing. Like, this is why I don't write like really happy-go-lucky stuff because like Carolyn, I think, asked me to do a short story, and one of my other patrons, did be like, oh, you should write a short story with, these characters from your book. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and without fail, each time it's like I cannot do this without someone dying, like without fail. It's I'm gonna write something fun, and now someone's dead. Crap.
Especially if you want to keep them around for like the next book, right? You're like, you can't
Yeah.
kill them off.
Exactly.
Well,
Where
yeah.
where timeline does this fall? They can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, crap. Never mind. This is now just an EU non-canon thing. We can go
There
the
you
Star
go.
Wars route where we have our EU and then we have what's canon.
Legacy or legends, yeah.
Yes,
But
yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And that's the thing I find with a lot of my books is that I don't know what it is, but I've always got, not always, maybe always, these massive twists. And especially my short stories. Like I'll take you by the hand and gladly walk you down the path to a certain point and then tell you to close your eyes and push you off a cliff. It happens all the times in my short stories.
You have to have that little thing that is your signature. And
Yeah.
that is, I think, that makes it so excellent with just talking with different writers and the fact that, as you talked about, I think, in your last stream, Travis, about the fact that, like, you can give, 100 writers the same writing prompt and
Yeah.
tell them, these are beats that you need to hit. This has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen, and here's your prompt. And you are going to get 100 different ways of telling that story. And that is just the main reason why I've always not really understood a lot of heavy competition between writers and whatnot, because it's no one else is going to be able to write my story the way it is. So what does it matter if I talk to this other person about it? Because if that inspires them to write something else, great, that's cool. It's not going to be my story.
Right.
And also cool, then that means that there's more for my fans to be able to pick up and read while I am busy writing the next book so that they don't bother me as much about the fact that it takes a little longer than you always expect it to.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think there is some things, like I said in the same stream, is that anything that you've got that's kind of proprietary, like if you've got a
Yes.
brand new technology that you've created, that's going to be a surprise
Yeah.
in that, then you kind of keep that to yourself. Or, if humans are serving up aliens, right? Because right now I'm the only
Yeah,
person that I know of where
very
someone's
little
cooking up an
new
alien, right?
things.
So that kind of stuff you want to keep, but that's there.
So I got a quick question for you guys, because I know that, and because I don't know the answer to this, but because I kind of while we were recording the podcast, I kind of told you you guys how I got into writing, but how long have you? I think I know, Travis, a little bit about how long you have, but I mean, please definitely go in again. But LJ, listen, I don't know how long you've been writing, or like what got you into it. Like, it.
Oh, and so I have been writing creatively since I was a little kid. I've always loved it. And it's actually how I ended up meeting like Kierwin and a couple, like half of the bridesmaids at my wedding were all people that I had met from writing stories online.
That's awesome.
But what got me into actually sitting down and writing a novel, and with composers' help, setting up an indie publisher and whatnot, was actually becoming disabled, or I should say realizing that I have a genetic disorder, and honoring the fact that I can't actually do all of the things that I used to do, because I am by apprenticeship and by college degree, I am a equine science person and a horse trainer and a riding instructor, which is why all of my stories are very factually correct when it comes to how you manage horses. Because it's also one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm reading fantasy, doing the like, what are you doing? You've never ridden a horse before. Do not get on that horse bareback. You just killed your protagonist, because they would have fallen off and died. Good job, writer. So that is, I started writing as kind of catharsis and whatnot, and now it's built up into all of this, and wanting to be able to write about, challenges with, living as a disabled person and all of that in a fantasy setting where it can be kind of insidious almost with how I throw it in, so that you don't realize it until later on. It's like, oh wow, that person is disabled. They've got these things wrong with them. Though admittedly, I also didn't realize that some of my characters were disabled, because I just kind of applied my life experience to them. And then when people like Kierwin were reading it and beta reading for me, they did the like, you understand that normal people don't do that, just so you know. I'm like, oh, okay, well, cool. They're disabled now, apparently. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it took you some time to realize as well. So,
Oh God, yeah,
in life, right?
Absolutely.
And that's it.
But yeah, so that is my writing story, my journey thus far.
That's awesome. I actually have, mine's a pretty crazy story that I haven't really told fully.
Well, I mean, if I'm dragging out something you don't want to
No, it's good.
talk about, okay,
Yeah, no, it's all cool. But I will say that this is absolutely, there's the middle part of this is just going to kind of like leave your head spinning a little bit.
See,
But-
this is why you even lived the twists, so you throw the twists.
That's right.
Exactly. So but there are some points I need to leave out. But anyways, I've been writing, like LJ, I've been writing since I was a kid. And I've had poems published in anthologies and stuff like that in Life A. So where in the first chapter of my life, or the first book of my life before my accident, I had stuff published in poetry anthologies. I used to write for a magazine called Urban Mail Magazine. It's kind of like GQ. It was magazine, so I did articles for that. It was also the first time I almost had my ass kicked over an article I wrote. Luckily, I wasn't there where the guy showed up to. So otherwise, it would have been a different story.
First time, I see.
Yeah. But at any rate, don't piss off bodybuilders. But so I did a lot of writing and stuff like that, and published in a few different things, and then I stopped writing altogether. and I got caught up in other things. And I ended up taking part in a religious ceremony from a certain faith that I can't state. And in this religious ceremony, a god or a being or a goddess, whatever, came and entered into the person that was the host for this ceremony that was happening. And it was like terrifying, honestly. It was this creature thing knew stuff about me that there's no way anyone in the room would have known. And they also said that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And if I didn't change what I was doing and do what I should be doing, or what I meant to be doing, something drastic would happen to force me.
And then you got hit by a car.
And then and a few years later, I got hit by a car. And that left me unable to do anything except write. So going through therapy, I started getting back into writing to write out my dreams and change, or my nightmares, and change the endings. And then that got me back into writing, and I'm now fully a writer. I write, I stream writing, I work for a writing company, and I'm very happy. I think everything is fantastic. But yeah, I actually was told by a deity that if I was not doing what I should be doing, and I did not change my ways, then something drastic would happen to force me.
So what I'm hearing is, don't piss off bodybuilders, and don't piss off gods.
That's it.
Both of those seem like excellent pieces of advice.
It's pretty
granting to people is the.
Yeah, it's pretty good advice. So the bodybuilder thing was, I worked at a gym, and I was a power lifter, and I did Olympic lifting and powerlifting. So I was strength training, and there was a lot of bodybuilders. And I was doing an article, which I should have been maybe more clear, but I was doing an article on powerlifting versus bodybuilding, and talking about how powerlifting does strength training and builds up strength. And it's about functional strength. So functional strength training versus bodybuilding. Where bodybuilding, you're strong, but you're focusing on certain muscle groups and making yourself look good. Whereas functional strength training is remaining extremely strong, but functional and not getting too large, too big. And there was this bodybuilder that came into the gym all the time, and he heard I was writing this article and stuff. And I said, I needed a model for the image for the magazine. So I took a photo of him, and we did. And I used that photo for it. And then I wasn't at the gym, luckily, when the magazine was released. And he read the article, and he decided that I was calling bodybuilders weak and saying that functional strength training was better, and that bodybuilders were basically just full of puffed air, which is not what I was saying at all in the article. Right. And so he took exception, and he was also on steroids. And he ended up coming to the gym and jumping the counter, trying to get to my office to come look for me. Because he was really pissed off that his face was used in this, his likeness was used in this article. So I learned don't piss off bodybuilders, and be extremely clear. If you're going to use someone as a model for something you're working on, let them read it first.
Yes. Yeah, that's always a good call. Always a good call.
Absolutely. 100%. Oh man, I am glad I have not gotten any fights like that or avoided any fights.
Yeah, he was pretty calm. Like, when I got a phone call from the receptionist saying that he was there, I went to the gym, but by the time I got there, he had calmed down significantly. But there's also
relief, at least.
Exactly. This is also the gym where I was the assistant manager, and I was good friends with the manager, and we had a guy come in. Because we had a lot of gang members and mob members that would go in. And 2 guys showed up with guns looking to go into the gym to try to shoot one of our members. So we ended up having to block them and get them out. So it was an interesting thing.
See, these are all stories you need to tell here. I got to tell you.
Eventually, the next project at some point that you need to work on is an autobiography. There we go.
I started working on that a few times and then kind of backed away from it. But one thing I did want to do, though, is because we were teasing it before, and because it is going to be the movie we're going to watch next week, we're going to discuss this again on Thursday. But I was talking about how The Haunting of Hill House has the most amazing opening paragraph of a book or of a story. And this is just absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to read this because it's just so beautifully done. It's just an exquisite piece. So as we all know, with the opening page, opening lines, you want to grab someone, you want to pull them in, you want to hook them, and you want to let them know that things are going to be different. So in the opening paragraph for The Haunting of Hill House, No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within it. It stood for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there, walked alone.
I love that they kept that for the Netflix version because it just makes my skin tingle. I love it.
I've got goosebumps all over it. Like it's just, it's just so beautiful because this is the one where you've got, like, if you think of a haunted house, you think of a rickety place that's falling down and collapsing and the boards are falling off and the roof has got holes in it. But with this, it's like, no, it's firm, it's solid, it's been here for 80 years, it's going to be here for another 80 years. The bricks meet neatly, the floor is firm, the house, like, the doors are sensibly shut. So if the doors aren't shut, they're sensibly shut.
Yep.
So why is it sensible to have these doors
Yes.
shut? What is the darkness that's within? And it tells you that, like, this house is a living, breathing entity. It's not, the house isn't, like, the house is the character. And it's not the twist, right?
I'm working on a blog post that I really need to finish that is discussing the difference between ghost stories and characters as locations. Because if you look at that, like, Hill House is a character. It's not the ghosts that are, if you take the ghosts away from Hill House is still an entity of its own. It is still going to draw people to it. These things are still going to happen. It will populate more ghosts. Whereas other haunted houses are okay, if the ghost goes, everything's fine. The house is clean,
Right.
everything's good. And same with, like, The Shining, the Overlook.
Yes.
Is a menace in and of itself. And it's not the ghosts. It is the entity that is the Overlook Hotel. And these are just two excellent examples of using a location as a character and as a terrifying character, which is just so exciting when people do it right.
Oh, most definitely. And that's what I love about this, is that it's like, and they don't try to take it as a twist. Like, one of my favorite ghost movies is The Others with Nicole Kidman. Because the ending of that movie, like, I'm really good at watching movies and, like, halfway through or quarter the way through being like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to end. But when I was watching The Others, it was like being hit in the face with a brick at the end. I was like, wow, what? Really? Like, it was one of the few movies that absolutely caught me off guard. And I thought it was fantastic with how that played out. It was just so well. It's the kind of twist that I try to put into my stories as well. But for this, they don't use this as a twist. They're not telling you that at the end you're like, oh, the haunted thing was the house. Like, the house was the entity that you need to be dealing with. It's right from the very beginning. No live organism can continue to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Hill House, not sane.
Yep.
So right there, boom. Hill House is a living entity, and it's not sane. So it's immediately grabbing you and saying, jump in, we're going for a wild ride, and I'm gonna take you every step along the way. And the really cool part about the movie, the read it, yeah.
The author, she's so good at it.
Shirley
she's
Jackson,
also
yeah.
the one who wrote, like, The Lottery and whatnot. That is just, she's great.
Yeah.
Now, did any houses, like, influence her, like the Hill House, when she wrote it? Because, I mean, with The Shining, I know that Stephen King had written part of it up at the Stanley in Estes Park, where my wife and I were just visiting, and it's a beautiful hotel. And then I think there was another house that he had stayed in that it's a kind of combination of the two. But do we know if, like, she had seen or like a house beyond the possession of the house, right? But, like, as far as the way it looked and how she described it, was there any houses that influenced her to do that, like, to describe it in that way?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question for that.
Have to look it up.
Yeah. But the other thing that's really cool about the movie that we're watching on Thursday is it's got one of my all-time favorite characters or actors for horror movies, for that kind of stuff, and that's Vincent Price. Vincent Price is the main actor in it, and I just absolutely love everything that Vincent Price laid his hand to. It was amazing.
I'm terrible with names, so thank God
Vincent
for
Price
I-
was very well known for, if you listen to Michael Jackson Thriller, that
Yeah.
the narrator voice and the laugh
Yeah.
at the end, ah ha ha ha.
Ah.
That's Vincent Price.
There we go. Yep.
He
Yeah.
always just seemed to like to dress like a vampire.
Yeah.
And especially in his old age. You know, he
Oh.
yeah.
He was like a more refined Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Bill
Very-
Hader's impersonation of Vincent Price is amazing.
I have not seen that.
Yeah.
Uh
And that's actually the face of Universal. That's the thing. Like there was there was Bela Lugosi, there was Vincent Price, and there's also, why am I blanking on his name now? He was in Plan 9 from Outer Space. The wrestler guy, the short stocky. I'm blanking on his name. But there were 3 or 4, and there's also the Bride of Frankenstein. The woman that played Bride of Frankenstein was very just iconic for those movies. For that. But yeah, so The Haunting of Hill House, I find just that, and that's the thing, listening to the Writing Excuses podcast where they're talking about first page mistakes and then first paragraphs and first lines, and that's something that I looked at it and I was like, I think, because it got me thinking, and I think my first page, my opening of Line of Archinomus, I think I can make it 1,000 times stronger. I think I've got a good hook. I think I've got a good pull-in for that. But I think I've got an idea that I can really just, kind of like The Haunting of Hill House, I can set the tone and tell the reader what's going to happen all the way through, within just a short little paragraph. And that's something that I really, like, I love movies and musicals and things like that. I love Beauty and the Beast. And I absolutely love the fact that the opening song of Beauty and the Beast, where she's singing the provincial town and she's singing and dancing going through the town,
Yeah.
she, in that song, describes the entire movie. In that song, she tells you what the movie is going to be, because she's like, oh, this is what the book is about. So the book that she's returning to the library is Beauty and the Beast, because she's like, this is my favorite part. This is where she meets the charming prince
Charming.
or Prince Charming, but she doesn't realize that until chapter 3.
Don't worry, Kierwin could completely sing the entirety of Belle's stuff for us, because that is a character that one day I want to see her actually do the whole thing for.
That is awesome. But yeah, it just lays out the story for you, and I love, and not a lot of people pick up on that unless, you're literary and you kind of break stuff down and look at it, but it's actually like everything that happens is there.
That it allows for rich rereading or, rewatching or re-listening when you add in things like that to your story, when it's this first line, this first paragraph that tells you everything you need to know. You just don't know it yet, so it makes it, when you read it again, this is awesome, I know exactly what you're talking about here now. And I feel you for having the rewrite, because I just did that for the sequel of The Dying Sun, the Pantheon Prophet. I was just doing all my revisions and whatnot, and I found a major plot hole that now I get to kill a character, so that's always exciting.
Nice.
But I was reading my first paragraph and first page and was looking at it and being like, I am starting this at entirely the wrong point again. This is a very cold, sterile way of introducing the start of this book, when I can do something so much more powerful and have it be a much more meaningful jump start, where you're getting to meet the characters and get this relationship built right off the start, instead of this very slow open and slow burn that is that's not necessary in the second book. Let's just get the ball rolling and moving and do it.
Yeah.
But that, you don't have to always get it right on the first try, is one thing to kind of remember too, is that's what rewriting and revisions are for, is looking at it and being like, this can be better.
Exactly. And being honest, not being a lazy writer. Like, that's the thing I found. I've almost fallen into that trap where you take a story you've already written, because I'm talking about how outlining can help people, even if you're a pantser. outlining is still good. Even if you outline after you pants your story, if you look at an outline for how a story goes and hold your picture, your story up to that outline and say, does this match? Does it work? You have to be honest with yourself and not be a lazy writer. Not be like, well, that kind of fits in with an inciting incident, so I'm just going to leave it. Well, no. If it's not an inciting incident, make it an inciting incident. Like, don't leave kind of, sort of, fix it.
I think Neil Gaiman has one of my favorite quotes about writing, and it says the process of doing the second draft is the process of making it look like you knew what you're doing all along. And it's just like should be every writer's mantra, regardless of what you are doing, what type of genre you're writing, if you're writing scripts or anything. Second draft is always the process of making it look like you knew what the hell you were doing the first time, right? So I did some research on the inspiration for the house because I was curious. There's a house, I think it's in it's Winster Mystery House. I think it's in San Diego.
Oh, I think it's San Francisco. I think
San Francisco. Yeah.
Winster or the Winchester?
That makes sense.
Winchester Mystery House, right? So
that was the same inspiration for Red Rose with Stephen King.
Was it because it was that and also the Stanley, right? And because I think that was the other one because he spent a lot of time. Stanley's is a very beautiful hotel up in the Rocky Mountains where it's again a very cold place where it's I kind of probably inspired some of those winter storms you saw, right? Because again, Estes is right up there, but it's another fun fact as I was looking at it is that it said that Shirley Jackson's husband was too afraid to read Haunting of the Hill House. Like he just refused to read this book because it scared him so much.
That is amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I know what I'm reading this evening.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pull that out. And that's the thing. I love composer. Just gotta go down to the Winchester, grab a pint, and wait for this all to blow over.
Yes, there you go.
But that's the thing is the Winchester Mansion. I absolutely love the Winchester Mansion, and that was speaking of marketing brilliance, Stephen King's Rose Red. If you haven't read the book, seen the movie, whatever, it was fantastic. He set up a fake university. He set up fake courses. He set up everything to make Rose Red be a real life event. And for the longest time, people thought it was real. And it was all completely fictionalized. He created websites, email addresses. Like, it was just amazing. But the concept behind Rose Red is this house that is consistent, like continuously being built and always changing. So you get into this mansion and it's a living, breathing thing, and it's constantly moving and changing and stuff. And that's, for those of you who may not know, that's what the Winchester Mansion is. The widow of the Winchester fortune had all the money from Winchester, obviously. And the story goes that she was being haunted by the ghosts of everybody that had ever been killed by a Winchester rifle. And in order to stop them from getting to her, she was perpetually building this mansion. So there were staircases that led to nowhere, doors that opened up to 40-foot drops, hallways that led in dead ends, hidden doorways, all this stuff, because it was constantly being built to hide, to confuse and confound the ghosts, to keep them away from her.
Wasn't there another movie? It was like seven Ghosts or some. Oh my God!
13 Ghosts.
13. Thank you. It was a similar way. They kept building the house, right?
Well, that house was a ghost trap. That once you went in and you closed the door, and that triggered the house to start opening and shifting and releasing the ghosts slowly, because they were captured and kept trapped in cages. Yeah. And then the ghosts would be released bit by bit, and it was a really sadistic movie. But
was that a book before?
I'm not sure.
13 Ghosts.
I'm not sure if it was or not.
Kind of want to.
It'd be one to read. But speaking of
as we turn into a horror stream.
Well, I mean, it's a good genre. I've never written horror. It's and like you can't when you're writing kids books, you can't unless you're doing some silly little Halloween thing. Yeah. You can't really do the blood and gore. No.
The children.
Yeah. One of my.
No, horror is something that I do love having elements of just kind of peppered into fantasy personally. I love being able to work with like one of my main characters is a necromancer. So it's yes, we are going to have horror elements in this book and you're going to that coming right off the bat that it is going to be dark because this is what we're dealing with. And
I'm just laughing what composer said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Timmy gets homework. You can do what I do and
Homework.
just slap everyone with a bunch of horror at the very last minute and make them kind of quiver in their seat. There's one story I wrote called The Price of Fame, and it's about this guy who is suddenly became famous. Like, he got these imbued with these magical powers after this bright flash of white light, and all these people were like staring at him and wanting to wanting his autograph and wanting to be near him, wanting to touch him and all this stuff, and he was just slowly getting more and more agitated by it. And he worked at a grocery store, and he ended up, his boss let him go to his bunker up in the mountains, and so that's where he was. And he's one scene where he's sitting there and he pours himself a scotch and he's toasting the visage of his boss hanging above the bar, and he is talking about the fans that are outside pounding on the glass trying to get into him because it's bulletproof glass, and all the police out there doing their best to try to keep everyone at bay. And it ends up so this whole thing sets up this entire scene until you realize that he actually had a psychotic snap. And that's what that flash was he had a psychotic break. And it was almost like almost like a paranoid schizophrenia thing. So he ended up actually, what he had been doing was he had kidnapped all these different people, and he had them set up in the glassed-in living room of this house, and he was about to torture and murder them over several days. And he had already murdered his boss. And the visage was actually his boss's face that he had peeled off the corpse and then nailed to the wall above the bar.
I love it.
So
I'm terribly morbid. That's what I really should have gone with instead of pedantic, is morbid. Or
yeah.
But no, that is exactly the kind of stuff that I love throwing in, and is very much the slight spoiler that there will be more and more of that throughout my series, because it's very much it starts out relatively sane and then you're going to continue with that. One of my favorite books, though, is I think it's Throne of the Crescent Moon or something like that, and he hits you right away with exactly the kind of story it is, that if you don't have a stomach for it, get out now in the prologue, because the start is just torture right off the bat. And it's if that is not what you have a stomach for, then this is not the book for you. Which I do like having that a little bit at the start, or even sometimes like content warnings, to kind of give some people a bit of a heads up that it's because you don't want to traumatize your reader. You still want to thrill and have them enjoy reading your book.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of delicate balance of, doing that.
But that's the thing I find, though, like with the Price of Fame thing, is there's never any outright violence or horror. It's all in your mind, because you realize what the truth of the matter is, and then it's when you're sitting down laying in bed trying to go to sleep that you're like, oh wait a minute, oh wait, oh wait, that's what that, oh no. And then it's kind of being built in your head. And Composer made a good point. Game of Thrones is strong on the abrupt horror, definitely. Speaking of towers, speaking of horror, all of this stuff, I have a question for you both, and anyone in chat, if you want to jump in, let me know. Jump in on this. I saw something a while ago that blew me away and kind of changed my perspective on something, and it was on Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
And if you've
seen... Are we talking live action, or are we talking about
both? All of
animated?
Them.
Okay.
All of them. So the thing is, we know as you go through the movie, Belle walks into the house, and there's all these things are singing to her: the cupboards, the dishes, the fork, knives, and spoons, the candlestick, the curtains, all the furniture are all servants that have been transformed by this curse into these furniture pieces. And the Beast is this wildly aggressive, violent creature because he's tied up in this thing. We see him raging and smashing stuff around and all that stuff. I think it's the west wing of the house, whatever wing of the house.
Yep.
Belle is forbidden from going to the west wing of the house. And it's given that that's where the rose is, and that's where she sees the painting, and that's where you see that the Beast is the prince. However, that west wing is also full of trashed and destroyed and broken furniture. So was that furniture trashed, broken, and destroyed beforehand, or are they servants that were killed in a fit of rage by the Beast? And he hid the bodies in the west wing.
Oh my!
Rage murders, 100%.
This was like murder. Dead. Yeah. They're gone.
That's kind of what I agree with.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's murder, and then that also goes to show character growth later on. The reasons that he has mellowed out and is a yeah. Well, as composer said, like you get really, it becomes worse and worse the more you look at the timeline. It's like the Beast is 21 for crying out loud by the time the Rose is done and he and Belle fall in love and whatnot. So it's like if he's been cursed for like 15 years or some crap like that. Like he
2/3
was
of his
cursed
life.
as a child.
Did it really
What?
state that he was 7 though? Like, I mean,
I
I
don't
think
know if they say, but
because you know how these Disney things go, they kind of get
they
enchanted, and then
say
they're
something about
stuck
how
at a certain
long
age. You know.
that he was cursed for.
Hmm.
So it's no, it's basically I'm very anti fairies when it comes to all the Disney fairies because they're all terrible when you really get down to it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, if you look at
cursing
Irish
was
lore, fairies are not good creatures. They're
Oh
miserable
no, they
little
are
buggers.
the most malicious little.
They are terrifying. You don't want to mess with them.
Yeah. I've never been a fan. I've never understood this thing of like, oh, it's a fairy princess. No, it's not a fairy princess. Chew your face off. That's what I liked about the movie Labyrinth. Is the fairies in Labyrinth were like true fairies.
Yeah.
And they are terrifying and just it's so besmirching the face, not a good idea.
Especially if you're
Whoops.
Irish background.
Whoops.
Oh, it's gonna be a long
I
night.
say is 25% Irish or whatever the heck it is. Yeah, whoopsies. Oh
Yeah.
well, it's fine.
Well, it's also like Pan's Labyrinth, right? You see the mythology and like the fairies that he put in. I forget who the director was of that. It was
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that was they did not look friendly.
No.
And of course that was also like the trauma the young lady's going through and how she kind of dealt with that through what was going in her mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite just monster designs in general that is so inspiring is that Fae with the eyes in his hands and whatnot at the feast
Yeah.
is so memorable and such a cool design and so simple and yet so terrifying when you get right down to it of the the teeth, the eyes, everything is just
And even the
top-notch
fingertips.
design.
The fact that it's this flabby, fleshy colored thing, and then the fingertips turn to the dark, almost like a henna, dark red tips of the fingers. It was so well designed. And speaking of Guillermo del Toro, if you like horror movies, if you like war movies, all of that fun stuff, I highly, highly recommend watching The Devil's Backbone. Or El Espinosa del Diablo is a very small movie. It was not very big when it came out. It's still not very big. But The Devil's Backbone is a fantastic horror movie, and it's set during the Spanish Revolution, I believe it is. And it's this little boy is dropped off by his father, abandoned by his father at an orphanage, and it's a haunted orphanage.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to.
it's
I will
gorgeous.
watch it.
Like the cinematography, the filming, the writing, everything is just absolutely blew me away.
When Guillermo del Toro is left to build in his own sandbox, he makes just gold. He does incredible things. We'll ignore The Hobbit. I'm gonna just pretend that never happened and is not part of his filmography or anything like that.
Which ones are you guys talking about? Sorry, my wife just reminded me my son turns 6 tomorrow. I have to go put together a basketball hoop, and she has to wrap the board game. So I missed that part. So
Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying The Devil's Backbone
okay,
is a very big it's a very good horror movie where it's cinematography, and it's a simple movie. It's not like the entire thing takes place basically in the orphanage, and it's just like not a lot of set design, but the concept, the spookiness of it, everything is so really well done. But and the composer was saying that the eyes make you uncomfortable. Like the most iconic D&D monster is a giant eye with a tentacle.
Yeah.
yes,
That is true.
can't remember what that's called for some reason.
Beholder.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is like the most frustrating thing when it comes to like brain fog is because I have an excellent memory for some things, usually useless knowledge, half the time. And then there's the rest of the time that you're just saying that you're like, the thing,
Yeah.
the things,
You know,
that.
the stuff that they have the tentacles. I'm the same way. Like with my brain damage, I've got a lot of brain fog, and I'll also use the wrong word in things. So I'll call something the wrong thing or whatever, and that's what my people in my chat are starting to pick up on. They're like, "Oh, have you ever seen this movie?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And they'll say something about it. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, actually, I have," and it's because I've completely forgotten. But song lyrics from the 1960s, you can't beat me. For some reason, I have them all.
As you do.
Yeah. But anyways, well, that sounds like you've got a full night ahead of you then, Ted.
Oh, it'll be fun. Like I know I have to go again. He's turning 6 tomorrow, so it's gonna be he's gonna wake up at like 5 a.m. and jump on me. I know this is going to happen. Yeah. So.
Well, happy birthday to the little one.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you. Owen is going to be ecstatic to go and do all the things that a 6-year-old and start kindergarten, because last year we didn't send him to it because of all the things, and virtual kindergarten is just a waste. So,
yeah.
But how would you do virtual kindergarten anyways? Like that's just stay home and like play and have books read to you, and
but it's not but it's actually a little different now. Like when I remember when I was in kindergarten, it was like that. You have read books, you played. Now they have homework. It's ridiculous.
That's insane.
They have like they start languages at that age. They have things that they need to do, and my wife was a teacher before we adopted my son, and we adopted him when he was 2 days old. So anyway, it won't be until August 2nd that we have actually been in his life for 6 years, because when we got the call, then we went to Brooklyn of all places, and we brought him home. But she was a teacher, and thankfully during this whole thing, and I don't want to talk about pandemic stuff, but like she was able to put together a curriculum, teach him the entire time, and I swear that he's gonna come home and be like, I learned more from mom than I did from this kindergarten, right?
So most likely,
probably
100%. It's gonna be amazing.
But like that's excellent. Like I know my mom was a teacher, and it was like it's awesome. Like one of the greatest things she's done for me, and I always I've told her this, that I loved the fact that she always made sure that we knew how to read and all of those kinds of things well before, honestly, most of my classmates when it came to kindergarten and grade 1 and whatnot, because it was just this is an important skill. So
yeah,
and
it's nice also have a teacher as a wife, so that after my first edits, before I send it off to my editor, I can be like, hey, can you review this? So so, and she's been very kind enough to do that. And the nice also thing, well, when I do get around to recording this as an audiobook and also as a podcast, I'm going to turn that really messy closet behind me into a soundproof booth. And she's actually offered to read it, which I'm a horrible reader. I mean, I'm ADHD and dyslexic, so getting me to read things verbatim is like, no way.
Not happening.
No, I mean, I've done a lot better with kids' books, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm started with that. But she's my pre-editor before I send it off to an editor before beta readers get it. So it's
nice.
Yeah. And that's definitely important. That's a big thing. But that's what I'm excited about for Maya growing up, is that my wife is an English major, and I'm a writer, and I've got all this like research and all this stuff that I do, and like the work that I do and stuff, where I'm like in the world of writing. And so I think at least for that side of things growing up, like Maya, I think she's obviously going to be probably be a big reader if she picks up on it. But when it comes down to schooling and stuff like that, and languages and writing and that stuff, we'll be able to definitely, we'll be able to help her through that stuff.
I'm just excited to be the bad influence on my nephews. That's really what it comes down to, because they're in Canada still, and I'm in the States, so it's just like I can do things and whatnot, like on the phone calls because we FaceTime and whatnot. So it's very much the like, oh, you should say that to your dad. Go for it. And then yeah, I hear about it in a few days when it's like, um, he said this, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. No idea.
Plausible denial. All right, yeah,
Yeah.
Yo,
just deny the whole thing.
See, I was
Uh,
the
exactly.
physical bad influence when my nephew was growing up. My goal every birthday and every Christmas was to buy him the most aggravating and irritating toy as possible that would piss off my sister.
oh,
So
yeah,
when he was
one of
like
those
2,
sounds.
oh yeah, so when he was 2, I
Yes.
bought him a. I mean, I got him some great gifts though. Like when he was 2, I got him a train whistle. When he was 3, I got him an animatronic lion that walked, roared, and he could ride on. And when he
Payback
was,
is a bitch, by the way. People are gonna send you all these things.
oh
You
yeah,
know this.
well that's it.
Oh
Especially
Karma.
when he was 5, I got him a drum set.
yes.
Ooh.
Like I was like really not that like, oh, I'm gonna it piss her off a little bit. It was like, no, I'm going all in on this. We're doing
So
drum
this
sets and
was
train
this.
whistles.
I'm assuming this wasn't like a like because we ended up getting Owen a drum set when he was 5, right? And but it was a digital like one you can roll out, you can charge, and it had a headphone jack, so he could just sit there and wail to like um, ACDC because that's what he loves right now, ACDC and
Yes.
like the Foo
Nice.
Fighters, and he just wails on it. And you know what we hear? Crickets.
Yeah, no, that didn't like
Amazing.
there was no headphones. This was an actual drum set. Like
There you go.
it had to, and then also the other rule was there could be no batteries that she could take out.
Yeah. It has to
Ooh.
be able to be noisy with no batteries.
Exactly. So that was pretty. And your composer, you're right. It is the gift of music.
Yeah.
Is always a great gift, but that's something that, and that's the thing too. Like my wife and I listen to everything. So you'll walk in to the living room and see me dancing with my daughter and singing the Grease soundtrack, like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, songs by N.W.A. and Dr. Dre and Eminem, heavy metal. Heavy metal I don't play for her because I did that once and she didn't sleep for like 3 hours. So
Yeah.
it was too
Bad
exciting
idea.
for her. Like
Yeah.
just the rhythm and the beats were too fast, too upbeat.
Yeah.
So I kept that down. But yeah, she listens. At least now when she can't understand the lyrics, she listens to everything.
Yeah, NWA not so much. I won't let my. I mean, being raised in like the slums of Trenton, that's all we listen to. So
Yeah.
that's
When she's old enough, that won't be
I
played
won't
for
let
her.
I won't let my son listen to that. Like I won't even let him listen to it.
Yeah.
So
Not once they can understand, but when she's at
yeah.
this age, she doesn't. All she's picking up on is the rhythms and the tones going
Dad,
through.
why is this guy saying "f the police"? I mean,
It's like, okay, well, now we have to have a big discussion here about race politics and history.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, those are those things that it's the once you are ready to have some of these big conversations, then you have them. Though, granted,
Yeah.
there's also like a lot of these things that as a kid, you didn't realize were these big things. That I think is one of the difficulties and challenges for writing kid stuff when you're writing something that has to be good for the kids and interesting for the adults. Because I know when I go back and watch movies that I loved as a kid, and I watch them now, and I'm just like, Mom, Dad, you guys let me watch The Hunchback of Notre Dame, like the Disney one? It was like, there's a dude being tortured with a cat of nine tails. This dude is talking about the fact that he wants to bone this lady in like a major and murder her. Like, oh my god, you let me watch that when I was like 6?
Yeah.
And yeah, you had no idea. Though in my parents' defense, they both did the like that movie made us uncomfortable. We really wish that you hadn't loved it quite so much. I was like, yeah, well,
It was great though.
Judge Frollo is still one of the best villains ever, so it's just
Yeah. No, for me though, it's more of when she gets to the point where she can start understanding words, and not understanding the meaning of the words, but the mimicry. I definitely don't want her
Yes.
walking around quoting NWA.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
would be bad. So
Well,
that kind of stuff that we're.
I mean, you gotta,
Yeah.
you gotta. I think when you talk about like and I'm going down a path here, but like, my son is African American and Hispanic, right? And he is. There are certain things that, even at this age, he needs to know, right? So
Yep.
you have to address it, and I try to address it in the things that I'm writing too, right? I try to make sure that their majority of my characters, when I do feature humans in this world, are people of ethnicity. Is not just the
Yeah.
pasty white guy like myself,
Yeah.
or my wife, that is featured in this. And I will say, Larissa, I went out and bought your book just while we were speaking. I
Yeah.
got the Kindle version because, but
Yes.
I
Thank you.
can't wait. I can't wait to listen to read and see some of the norms, the things you challenge in that, because you even at a young age, kids need to see this, and even some adults need to see it because they're just uncomfortable talking about these situations,
Yeah.
or anything, and it's
Absolutely.
it's
And like,
crazy, but
and it's safer to, in some ways, think about it and approach it and kind of start, that shift of opening your mind when it is something as, intimate as reading. It's just you and the book, so it's safe, for you, the reader, if this is an uncomfortable topic normally, that it's not something that you're not, sitting in a group of people being like, all right, let's talk race relations. Because, oh my God, that is an uncomfortable seat to be in if
it
you've
is
never had anything like that
it
before.
it
So
is,
it's easier to
but it
come into
has to
that and be
happen.
more open-minded if
Yeah,
you get weaned into it,
Yeah.
and
and I
then you
and
get
I
less pushback.
and I kind of alluded to the fact that my co-author Justin and I were writing these scripts, these films where he wants to push the envelope completely, where, and he's like, and the thing about films, and the sad thing about films is that 90% of the things that people write, they never get produced and put in actually in the cinema, right,
Yeah.
in theaters, right. So um and I have some ways around that with him, but this whole sci-fi fantasy universe we've developed around African lore and challenging these norms, and
Awesome.
I really I know that there will be people that will stand up and like, I don't feel comfortable, and they walk out of the theater, and that's what he wants to do, and I'm like,
Yep.
fine, let's do it, brother.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
ready. Challenge the norm.
Absolutely.
But those are
So
the things you need to do. Like I've just thinking of that. I'm thinking of two movies that, on the surface, are kind of fine, but if you dig into them and think about them, really kind of hit some solid points. And one is Watership Down, the cartoon, and
yeah,
District
well, the book,
B9.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
District B9, the entire movie District B9 is about the apartheid. If you
yeah.
look at it, it's an alien movie with this whole thing, but
Yeah.
it's about the
District
apartheid.
9 is amazing. I have never actually read or watched Watership Down. That was
Yeah.
one that my mom, like when I was little, I was like, I want to read it. It's about bunnies. And she's like, oh, honey, no.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're older, then you can read it. And then I never got back to it. And it's just like, I really need to, but,
It's amazing.
my
I
mom
read the
was wise enough to do you're maybe not quite yet, dear.
Well, that was the thing. Like, I read the book and then I wanted to see the movie, so I went into the video store when those were things back in the day,
Nope.
and
we're dating,
I
we're dating ourselves here.
yeah, but I asked. So I went to where it should be, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It was nowhere because it's an animated film, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I went to the front. I'm like, "Do you not have Watership Down?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we have it." I'm like, "Where is it?" They put it in the children's section. They were like, "Oh, it's a cartoon." I'm like, "No,
It is
it's not." I mean,
it
yes, it
is
is, but no,
it
it's
is.
not.
I mean, look. I think it's every parent's, and again, I'm getting into something, I think it's every parent's choice to kind of address it when they need to. But I think, there are some cultures that don't have the luxury of waiting, right?
Yeah,
And
that is true.
it, if Watership Down gives a simple message that, and again, I've read the book a long time ago, but if Watership Down gives a simple message of, that will kind of open the eyes of the young kids that are reading it, or even from the movie's point of view, which I think is probably, if you look at, um, anyway, I don't know if there's a newer version. I think there's on Netflix or something like that.
Yeah,
There's one,
Netflix, I think, did one.
Yeah,
but I think it's kind of like toned down, right? It still has the undertones, but the book itself really goes into, you know, the themes that a lot of people want to avoid. And I know being raised from where I was raised and what I've gone through. and also, having a son who is going to be more challenged out there than any of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? It's we don't have that luxury, right? I mean, we need to prepare, because
Yeah.
he's gonna be looked at as a threat one day, and it's sad.
It's just so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Sorry,
ridiculous
I went
that-
down this horrible path.
No.
This
No, but
path
you're-
of,
It's
you know.
important though. Like this is something that is. It is shameful that there are parents who have to tell their sons and their daughters, "Hey, you can't say certain things to a police officer. You can't do certain things outside that you might see your other friends do because you are going to be viewed very differently." And it is shameful that that is a part of life, but right now it still is a part of life, and it is something that more people do have to be aware of. But I think I actually need to head off the stream because my service dog just ditched me, which he usually does after he's gotten exasperated enough that he would like me to end sitting at my desk. So.
And I had to put together a basketball hoop, so that would
Yeah,
be,
and I have to go.
something I don't want to do at midnight.
No, exactly. I have to go
Oh,
take
never
care of
mind.
the
He's
wee
just
one.
ditching me because of food. But either way,
there you
there's
go.
food apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for being here. I'm actually going to use this as the stream end as well, because I have to run and go do something that I should have been doing a little while ago.
Well, you know.
Yeah, things happen. But it's great conversations, yeah. And just to your point, Ted, you're absolutely right. Like, there are conversations that need to be had, and that's something that having a daughter is fully... She's 4 months old, and I'm already having those thoughts. Like, the first time I held her, I was having those thoughts of how am I going to get her ready for life, and how am I going to deal with and help her deal with this myriad of stuff that I only know from secondhand knowledge.
Right.
Right, and there's a lot that's out there, but we'll see what happens. But
It's
thank you.
all part of life.
Exactly. But thank you both for being here. Thank you for everyone being in chat. I mean, this was, I think, a fantastic beginning to the writers, or not the writers chat, but to the
Scribe's journey.
I think this has
is
been
excellent.
great.
I agree.
I'm really looking forward to the next one. So the book of the month is The Hero with a Thousand Faces.